한국에 오신 걸 환영합니다. 굉장히 비트코인 커뮤니티에선 유명하신 분인데 한국의 일반 독자들은 좀 모르시는 분도 계세요. 그래서 본인 소개 잠깐 해주시고, 그리고 새로 준비하시는 책 Can't Ruin Everything 여기에 대해서도 간단히 얘기해 주시고 시작하시죠. 네.
Sure. My name is Ji미송1. I am a Bitcoin educator, developer, author, investor, many other things. But I've been in this space for a very long time. By trade, I am a programmer. I've been a programmer since 1998 when I graduated college. And I've been programming ever since. I've been in Bitcoin since 2011. And I've written several books, including Programming Bitcoin, which is translated into Korean. Let's see, the Little Bitcoin book, which is translated into Korean but only available online for download. You can go to littlebitcoinbook.com. There's also Thank God for Bitcoin, which is the Christian argument for Bitcoin, Bitcoin and the American Dream. And the newest book that you alluded to is Fiat Ruins Everything, which I just submitted to my editor at Bitcoin Magazine. So that will be published hopefully in the next 5 months.
이렇게 기술에 관해서도 굉장히 열심히 책도 쓰고 알려주시면서 또 인간의 어떤 휴먼 라이트 이런 부분에 대한 관심도 굉장히 높으시고, 그리고 어떤 경제학이나 이런 화폐에 관해서도 조예가 깊으신 것 같은데, 특히 인권에 관해서 많이 얘기하고 계신데 한 말씀 해주실 수 있겠습니까? 비트코인과 인권에 관해서.
I wrote the book Bitcoin, the Little Bitcoin book with Alex Gladstein and Alex Lloyd, both of whom are part of the Human Rights Foundation, and a bunch of authors from all around the world. So we had Luis Buenaventura from the Philippines, Elena from Eastern Europe, Timmy from Nigeria, and Alex from Venezuela. So we had a really global perspective on Bitcoin, and that's what that book is about. And the case we make there is that Bitcoin is an important tool of human freedom, because what happens in any dictatorship, if you study human rights at all, is that as soon as you have any human rights group that rises up, what happens first is they cut off all of the banking access to the people that are trying to get freedom, and this happens everywhere from Zimbabwe to various Middle Eastern countries and whatnot. And this is a big problem for a lot of human rights organizations, and Bitcoin is their lifeline, honestly. And we have the Anti-Corruption Foundation, which is the leading sort of opposition to Vladimir Putin in Russia, for example, and they take Bitcoin donations because they don't have a Russian bank account. They can't, and a lot of people within the country want to donate to them, but they can't. So this Bitcoin is like a very important method of funding a lot of these human rights organizations. Yeah.
개인적인 질문 하나 드리겠는데,
예.
우리나라 김해에 비트코인을 받는 가게가 생겼습니다.
예.
근데 제가 거길 현지를 가봤는데 그분이 거기 지미송이 방문해 주실지 모르겠다는 연락을 받았는데 자제분이 6명이나 된다고 그렇게 얘기를 하더라고요. 그래서 아이도 참 많이 갖고 계시고, 그러면 우리나라의 요즘 저출산 문제가 세계에서 대한민국이 가장 그것 때문에 골치를 아프고 있는데 그렇게 자녀를 많이 낳으신 것과 뭐 비트코인이 무슨 관계라도 있는지 아니면 뭐 아이들을 무척 사랑하시는지 한번 듣고 싶었습니다.
So I do love kids, obviously, because I do have 6 of them. But the reason it's not just me though. A lot of people in Bitcoin actually have a lot of kids. So I have a lot of friends that are in their mid-30s, for example, and a lot of them are on their 3rd kid, just had them in the past 12 months, something like that, and they're looking to have more kids. They'll ask me like what it's like having 6, which suggests that they want to have just as many. Now, why is that the case? What's the connection to Bitcoin? The problem. It isn't that Bitcoin gives you some magical power to have more children or something like that. The thing that you have to realize is that fiat money is the real problem. It is very, very difficult to plan when the monetary policy is continuously going all over the place. And people have children when they can plan properly. when they can see 5-10 years into the future. Most people in the fiat world only plan for like the next 6 months, right? They don't. It's very, very difficult. So. And it's and to sort of like minimize the uncertainty, you need a lot more money to minimize for the uncertainty that's going to happen over a long period of time. If you have Bitcoin, you're much more used to having a much longer term perspective, and that's the question that a lot of people that get into Bitcoin, especially the Bitcoin maximalists, that they start asking is, okay, what do I want to do with my life? How am I going to be in 5-10 years? And children is one of the things that you think about is how am I going to leave a legacy? What kind of a family name am I going to leave, and so on. So they end up having more kids, and I think traditionally that's been the case. And if you look at the advent of fiat money about 100 years ago, at least in the United States, that changed everything. People started having less kids with the Nixon shock in 1971 all over the world, just everywhere. It started going downhill, even after policy changes and so on. And it's a little bit sad for me, like watching Korea just completely depopulated. I was talking to a North Korean defector the other day, and we were talking about a lot of these human rights things. And we were thinking about it and saying, okay, in about 3 or 4 generations, North Korea could just have more people and just take over that way. Despite all of the advantages of human rights, freedom, and all of these things that South Korea has over North Korea, they can still win because of this insanely low birth rate. So this is something that you have to really think deeply about, is changing the money so that people can plan long-term, have more children. Because, I mean, like, my wife and I have been going to a lot of these tourist places, and I always see like nursing area, like special seats for pregnant women. I get it. You're trying to make it like better but that's not going to do it, right? Those are like Band-Aids. What you need is to cure the real underlying problem, which is that people can't plan for the future. Every single person that I ask about why they don't have more kids, it's because they don't feel financially secure enough, right? It's a problem with the money. It's not anything to do with not enough facilities or something like that. It's about the money and future.
그러니까 피아트 머니가 피아트 루인즈 에브리싱이라는 뜻을 좀 이해하겠고 그러다 보니까 비트코인 픽싱 에브리싱이라는 주장도 좀 이해가 되네요. 그러니까 그 계획을 세울 수 있고 미래를 설계할 수 있는 건전한 돈이 필요한데 암만 땀 흘려 일해도 미래 설계할 수 없는 피아트 시스템의 잘못. 그 기존 통화 시스템이 부도덕한 이유를 같이 설명해 주신 거네요.
Well, that's definitely a part of it, and it does sort of like put a lot of uncertainty. And I've been talking to my relatives and stuff like that, and they a lot of them say it's very hard here in Korea. Why? Well, not only does the husband have to work now, the wife has to work in order to make ends meet and all of that. This is fiat theft. This is the theft through inflation that's happening on a constant basis, growing the bureaucratic class, the rent-seeking class, the busybody class. And these are the people that are essentially sucking productivity out of the economy and sucking energy from all of these families that could, like my mom stayed home when I was little, and I grew up for the first 8 years here. She stayed home with me and my sister. Of course, she had time for that. If you're working, how the heck are you going to have any time for any of that? There's no way to save. There's no way to plan for the future. It makes it extremely difficult.
뭐 비트코인을 좋아하시는 분들은 결론만 그렇게 얘기해 주셔도 이해를 할 텐데 그 일반인들이나 잘 모르는 독자도 계실 수 있거든요. 시청자들도. 그런 분들을 위해서 비트코인이 왜 그런 장점을 가지게 되는지 얘기를 좀 해주시죠.
Yeah. So the current monetary system is very uncertain, and I think you've seen it here in Korea, going back to even like the IMF stuff in 1998 and all of the sort of financial upheaval that resulted. You had people like donating gold, and everything else. 2008, you saw a lot of that all over the world, actually, with the great financial crisis. There's a lot of uncertainty in the current money, and that is because there's always constant expansion. So you don't really know how much you have. You might have, $1 million in your bank account, but you don't know how much that's worth because things are constantly changing. You have no idea if that's going to hold value or if you're going to get devalued. I've been all over the world. There's lots of places where if you hold the money in the local currency, it just gets devalued away from you very quickly. Two recent examples are Argentina and Lebanon. I've been to both those places. I was in Argentina for 3 weeks. At the beginning, the first day, I traded 284 pesos for $1. 3 weeks later, I left, and it was 330 pesos to $1. I did the same thing in Lebanon. I was only there 1 week. When I got there, it was 44,000 lira to $1. By the time I left 1 week later, it was 49,000. I think it's over 100,000 now. That's how quickly everything is changing. But that's money that's being taken away from people. And really, when you're constantly doing that, of course they're not going to have the freedom to go and do the stuff that they want. The malaise that you're feeling, the depression that a lot of people have, the sort of like societal sort of dark cloud that I feel here in Seoul, it's largely due to this sort of sucking out of energy from people through fiat money. All their values being captured. The best thing, like the closest thing that they have to a store of value is basically real estate. It's owning a home, owning an apartment or something like that. But even that's very volatile. It's very hard to trade, and you're in debt for 30 years, which is, what kind of a life is that if you're in debt for 30 years? The original model, the model pre fiat money was not getting into debt and paying it off over 30 years. It was saving money and then using those savings to go get what you want. Very few people do that today, and that's everywhere in the world. And that's a very sad reality. That's sort of a subtle way of showing you that fiat does ruin a lot of things because essentially we're enslaved to debt.
무슨 말인지 고맙고요. 중산층들이 아무리 이래도 가난한 이유도 비슷한 것 같습니다. 네. 그리고 말씀하실 때 또 비트코인의 장점을 또 많은 사람들은 내년에 반감기가 오지 않습니까? 그러면은 그 반감기와 관련해 가지고 이제 가격들을 많이 생각하기도 하는데 어쨌든 간에 이 비트코인 반감기가 어째서 중요한지 그 부분에 대해서도 또
So the halving is an important event because it shows sort of like the supply is capped, and the way that it works is that it halves every 4 years, and the 21 million limit is very related to the fact that 10 minutes times 210,000 is about 4 years. So 2,100,000 minutes is like 3.96 years or something like that. So that's when the halving happens. And that 2.1 million, like first one is 100 Bitcoins, 50, and so on. That's the emission schedule. And if you sum all of that up, 50, 25, and so on. If you sum up all of that up, it ends up being 100 times 210,000 is 21 million. But that's where it comes from. But the halving is significant because every time there's sort of like the supply shock, less new money has to come in for the price to go up, right? So there's a supply that is shrunk, and if demand even stays the same, then price will tend to go up because there's a fixed supply. And this is, economically speaking, pretty much the only thing that we've ever seen which has a very strict supply. That is fungible and has all of these other characteristics. We've never had that, and we didn't even think that this was possible up until Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin. Previously, if you had something digital and scarce, it had to be centralized. Somebody controlled it and somebody issued it, and you had to trust that they wouldn't issue anymore. With Bitcoin, it's decentralized and it's based on everyone running their own software and based on and you don't have to accept any other people's changes. So it makes it very difficult to change that number. In fact, it would require everyone to agree, which we know in any place that never happens.
비트코인 라이트닝 네트워크가 최근에 활성화되면서 비트코인 수용이 급증하고 있습니다. 근데 이런데 저희가 뉴스를 갖다 통해서 보면 미국에서는 그 뭐 스트라이크 잭말러 앱을 이용한 은행과의 제휴를 통해서 세계적으로 송금도 활성화되고 있다. 이런 게 굉장히 많이 들려오고 있거든요. 근데 이게 그냥 뉴스로만 그런 건지 아니면 실제로 그게 생활에 적용돼서 어떤 제3세계나 개발도상국 사람들이 미국에서 공국으로 그 송금을 하는데 비트코인을 진짜 그렇게 잘 활용하고 있는 건지 그 실체는 저희가 정확히 모르겠어요 아직. 과연 어느 정도 되고 있는지 그 부분에 대해서 좀 말씀 좀 해주십시오.
Yeah, so the Lightning Network has definitely been growing. So I think if you look at the channel capacity of the Lightning Network, it's I think past 4,000 Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, something like that. So there's definitely a lot of activity. If you go to any Bitcoin conference, you can usually pay for things with Lightning, and it's a pretty easy experience. There are sort of programs like Strike that let you do remittances. So if you want to do cross-border transactions, something like that, you can definitely do it in a pretty reasonable fashion. I think they're kind of capped on how much you can do at one time, but for a lot of people that work outside of their home country, this is a game changer. A lot of people from the Philippines, a lot of people from Nigeria, they work abroad, send money home. This, and if you use the traditional banking rails, that tends to be 8-10%. This is, I think Strike charges 1.5%, something like that. So it's a big savings for a lot of those people. Now, am I going to tell you that everyone in the Bitcoin community is using Lightning constantly? No, that's not the case. There are plenty of people that try to use Lightning as much as they can, and certainly if you're using something like Nostr, which is an alternative to Twitter, you're zapping people Lightning. Sats and stuff like that. There are also crowd funds and things of that nature where people will use Lightning. But it's not to the degree that I think a lot of people want it to be. A lot of people are very into sort of using Bitcoin as a means of payment, as a way to pay somebody else for some good or service. But I would argue that the much more important one is the store of value aspect. Not being able to plan for the future, being able to save, and being able to do things on a long-term basis rather than hey, how am I going to pay my rent or something like that.
한국에서는 저는 이 라이트닝 네트워크에 여기 보면은 한번 보이시죠? 예, 이 지역 같은 데 가서 많이 구매를 해봤어요. 그러니까 가치 저장 수단으로서 비트코인이 가장 훌륭하지만 또 이렇게 송금이나 사용하는 데서 쓸 수는 있겠더라고요. 굉장히 효율적으로. 왜냐면은 카드는 사용하는데 수수료가 몇 프로가 드는데 이건 수수료가 거의 안 드니까 상인들한테는 굉장히 유리할 것 같아요. 근데 대한민국에서는 일로 돈을 넣는 거 그리고 마지막에 여기서 다시 뺄 때 KYC나 이런 걸로 인해서 여기 들어가면 편한데 그게 너무 힘들더라고요. 그래서 그런 부분에 대해서 한국의 폴리티션 정치인이나 아니면 관료들한테 당국자들한테 해주실 말씀이 있으면 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Yeah, so KYC is a thing everywhere in the world, and honestly, a lot of politicians get very nervous when they don't know where things are going. They've gotten so used to using monetary policy tools. So usually, whenever they want to make something illegal, they won't necessarily enable the policeman to go and get those people. It's usually, okay, bank has to do all of the work. So they're deputizing the bank to do all of their work for them, right? By saying, okay, now you have to do KYC, you have to do this, you have to make sure that it's not from this or that. And they've kind of gotten lazy, right? This isn't a function of banks. This isn't what the government should be doing it on their own. But they're using this as a policy tool to go and basically capture all the bad people or whatever. I really don't think that's the right way to do it, and that only works if you have complete control of the monetary system, which honestly is happening in China, where they are going to look at something like a CBDC, and you have social credit scores and things like that. I don't think you want to go down that road. That's extremely authoritarian. But this is where KYC leads. This is where if you're getting nervous about that, then I think as a politician, you need to ask yourself: is this for you or for your constituents? Because for the people, this is an enormous burden, and you're essentially deputizing the functions of government to banks and saying you have to take care of all of these illegal things and make sure that it doesn't happen. No, that's actually the function of government. If you're going to make it illegal, then you should provide the funding to go and capture the people that are doing the evil things. Whether it be drugs or child pornography or whatever. It's sort of a mentality change that we need for a lot of politicians to trust people with freedom, and if they do something wrong, then by all means go and capture the bad people. But you are burdening the rest of us with all of this stuff, including a lot of these banks that now have to essentially police all of these transactions. That shouldn't be their role. That should be the role of some other entity that's actually looking to find out who's doing evil and whatnot.
네. 사람들을 나쁘다고 전제해 놓고서 모든 걸 규제하려고 그러니까 개인의 자유가 침해되는 것 같습니다. 이런 부분도 그 비트코인 커뮤니티 내에서도 좀 의견이 갈리는데 그 오디널즈 NFT와 관련해 가지고 이게 못마땅하다고 하시는 분들도 있고 이게 장기적으로 비트코인은 그 디지털 골드로 자리 잡고 그 위에서 생태계들이 만들어 나가는 건 뭐 어쩔 수 없다. 이런 견해가 좀 갈리고 있습니다. 우리 지미송께서는 어떻게 생각하시는지 좀 어려운 문제인데.
Yeah, I think ordinals are basically like every altcoin. They're created out of thin air by a centralized party and it doesn't do anything. It's literally a row in a database, and somehow they think it's worth something. And it only works because of sufficient hype and marketing that go into it, just like every altcoin, every ICO, every kind of DeFi thing and Web3 thing or whatever. And that's been sort of the pattern for VCs the last 6 years or so, is they pump something and then they dump it on retail, and they make a lot of money and they do well for their LPs and so on. But but really the retail people are the ones holding the bag. It's really just Robin Hood in reverse. You're taking from the poor and giving to the rich. I really don't think ordinals do anything. They have zero utility. They don't add anything valuable or anything. If you're going to make art, great, go and make art. But don't start saying that this is a new form of art because it has a pointer in a database or something like that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
오케이. 오디널즈는 아무런 의미가 없다고 말씀하신 건 알겠고, 그렇다면은 최근에 그 베트남에서 열린 라이트닝 콘에서 거기서 보면 타로 프로토콜이 또 이렇게 등장을 하지 않았습니까? 비트코인 네트워크 위에서 그 타로 프로토콜을 이용해 가지고 뭐 새로운 어떤 계약 같은 걸 해보겠다. 이건 어떻게 생각하십니까?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I actually got my start in Bitcoin programming in 2013 with something called color coins, and this was pretty much the same idea. The idea in color coins is that you designate certain sats as representing something else, and that's essentially what Taro is doing. That's what RGB is doing, and so on. They're all very similar in that they're another layer on top of Bitcoin to sort of do some of these transactions. When I began that, and I was coding this back in 2013 and doing that, I thought this would have a lot of use cases and so on. But what I realized later is that there's no market of people that are clamoring for this stuff. They're not going, okay, I have this big business problem. How can I solve it? Oh yeah, let's use this protocol. That's not how people usually come to this stuff. And what we found out, especially in post 2014 and so on with Vitalik, is you have to market it and get people excited about it, and you don't have to deliver anything. And that's basically been the altcoin thing. Now Taro, they're trying to do stable coins and stuff like that. Maybe there's a use case. It's hard. I don't personally see that as like the killer use case for Bitcoin. It's possible. I guess you could do stuff like atomic swaps and decentralized exchanges, but you still have to trust somebody. And Bitcoin is verified, don't trust. you don't want to be trusting a third party to have the right amount of US dollars in their bank account in some offshore entity or something like that. Ideally you have something that's not based on something like that. And that's the sort of like problem that's a little bit intractable. I don't really see a way around it. Perhaps it's something that will become more of a major thing in Bitcoin, but it's an experiment. I'm all for experiments. Lightning Labs people are my friends, and I know all of them, and good luck to them. But in a sense, I guess I have some scars from my time as a color coins developer. I don't know if this necessarily has a future.
Okay.
Yeah.